Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Career Fox TV. I'm Nancy Fox, the Career Fox, and today we're going to be talking about a really common issue that so many of you have been writing to me about. So I've been getting a lot of messages and letters from people who really want to hold on to their jobs, want to stay in their jobs. They really like their jobs, except they're going through an experience of having a bullying boss or a toxic boss. So sometimes I'm going to talk to you about several different kinds of toxicity and bullying, and I'm going to give you the straight scoop on really what can be done, what should be done, and what's really best for you in your career. I know there have been a lot, I've been seeing a lot of the videos and a lot of the advice that people have been giving. And there's a really important thing for you to understand before we even get started on this topic. We're dealing with a psychological kind of set of personalities where understanding the psychology behind the behavior and understanding your own psychology and your own reaction to it is very important in the overall picture of this and in the equation of you getting what you want out of the situation. So the first thing I want to tell you is, from my own experience, I've had two bullying bosses in my career, and for the most part, I had been very fortunate and had really good bosses. Not perfect, but good. And for the most part, they were good leaders. They were good mentors. They did some things occasionally that were a little bit, I would say not helpful or not really caring about me as their employee and as somebody they wanted to bring along to grow in the company. However, for the most part, I had really good bosses, but I did have two toxic bosses. One boss was simply just, he was a sexual harasser, and he was a screamer and a ranter and would berate you in public, which is really, horrendous. And then I had another one who was more subtle about it and was manipulative behind the scenes and was bad mouthing, me behind, with management above him. So let me talk to you let's break it down today about different kinds of bullying. Now, first of all, bullying and toxicity, sometimes they're one and the same. Bullying is the behavior, toxicity is the internal psychology of the person. And sometimes you've had a really long run with a boss that's been really good, and then all of a sudden this really unpleasant, demeaning, diminishing, abusive behavior begins. That is a completely different kind of bullying that's going on versus somebody who's been a bully all along the way. And you've just gotten to a place where you've had enough. So let's talk about the different kinds of bullying and the two different timetables of bullying leadership. And I'll talk to you about what you can actually do about it and what you really shouldn't do about it, and what the next steps for you might be to give you the best possible results. So the first kind of bullying boss is the yeller and the screamer. And this is probably the best kind of boss that's a bullying boss, because at least it's out in the open. And this kind of bullying is usually coming from a very high level of stress that the boss is under. I had a client once a lawyer who was working for a senior lawyer in her firm, and he was a screamer. He was screaming at her all the time, and he was screaming just generally. And the weird thing about it, and the most unsettling thing about it, is in that firm, which was a very male-dominated firm, they always were talking about how the women were so emotional, and that's why they couldn't promote them to partners. But he was a senior partner, and he was screaming and yelling all the time. Well, they didn't see that as emotional. They saw that as powerful. So that's really part of the issue, is perception and culture in a firm or a company. Is this yeller or screamer operating out of stress? If so, that's we're going to talk about what to do about the different types of bullies in a moment. But that's one type of bullying behavior from a boss. The second type is a little bit more unsettling, and that's the manipulator. This kind of boss is the kind of boss who's blaming, pointing fingers, finding fault all the time, and is selective about it. In other words, is using this blame and this manipulation, pitting people against each other, and is doing it selectively in order to feel powerful and in order to keep people off their game, so that he or she feels better about him or herself, but also so that he can use people around the pull people around the chessboard in a way that makes him or her feel powerful. The third kind of bullying boss is the gaslighter. It's a really sick kind of toxic behavior. This person makes you think that it's you, and it's sort of a flavor of the manipulator. But this kind of gaslighting is an art form where they actually make you think you're crazy, and that it's you, and that it's not them, and that you're imagining things, and that you're making stuff up, and that there's something crazy about you, and you start to believe it. If repetitively, if this is done repetitively, you start to believe it. You start to doubt yourself. You start to lose confidence. You start to be ultra sensitive and hyper vigilant, and now you are completely on the defensive, almost all the time, and the stress level that you're going through is through the roof. And then the fourth kind of bully is the narcissist, which is the hardest kind, and sometimes all three of them are under the umbrella of a narcissist. But a narcissist is also a particular psychological personality type. This person has no conscience, has no sense that they do anything wrong, and can't hear any criticism or any input. So you can never actually give them any kind of indication or tell them anything, because they can't hear it, and it's really never them. And everything is for them and about them, and they have nothing to do with any problems. So they're finger pointing everywhere, and they're never owning any responsibility. But more importantly, they can't hear any input. They can't hear any suggestions. They can't take any input. They have no conscience about it either. So they never feel bad. And that's the worst of it, because they never actually care about what's happening for other people. Now, before you go into saying, well, how do these people ever get to be leaders? That is so much a bigger question. And it really is about, now we're talking about the politics in an organization. And these things alter over time. Sometimes an organization starts with a really excellent culture, and then one person makes a decision to let one person in that's not in that culture, and it's tolerated, and then the next person comes in that's not in that culture. And over time, this happens very often when a company starts out smaller and then grows, and as they grow, one bad apple, two bad apples, and now the whole culture starts to shift. So very often people will tell me that they've been with a firm or a company for many years, and it used to be such a great place, and then over time, as it grew, the culture started to evolve, and it started to veer from its original heartfelt, caring, supportive, education-oriented, growth-minded, community-minded, entrepreneurial feel, and it's gotten big, and it loses its caring nature for the people and for the development of its people. And so that's really why. Or sometimes other things happen in a company, like it's been bought, a division has been purchased, or a division has been released, or there's been a hiring freeze, or there's been a wave of talent elimination where they've reduced headcount. All these things, mergers, acquisitions, a lot of things can go into why a company has changed over the years, and why it used to be such a great job for you and now it's not. And along those lines, sometimes you've had a great boss who suddenly seems to have turned on you, and you can't figure out why. Let me explain a little bit about why that happens. If you have a boss who's been it's been a great relationship for a long time, and then suddenly it's not, some things are happening for that particular boss that you don't know about, that you can't tell. There's an agenda. Some agenda is happening for that boss. It could be something personal, and it could be something professional. It could be something political, and you don't really know what it is, but it's changing that person's view of how they relate with you. And almost 99% of the time, it is nothing to do with you at all. Now, you can I certainly think it's a valid point for all of us to take good stock of have we changed at all? You need to look and see, you need to sort of take good stock of yourself and say, have I done anything to contribute to this? And really be straight about it with yourself. Be honest with yourself, or get some outside objective input about your own way of being and your own operation and your own performance. But if you've been getting really good performance assessments for quite a while, and it's been pretty consistent, and you've had a pretty good track record with a company, and now all of a sudden your boss is pointing fingers at you, finding fault all the time, criticizing you, or sometimes, a bullying boss can be actually avoid you, won't speak with you, won't answer your emails, won't take your calls, won't address you at all, will make a schedule to meet with you and then break it. This is all bullying behavior that's a bullying behavior of a different type. But there's something going on in that relationship. Ideally, it would be great to set up a conversation with that boss and ask that boss, is there something that I've done to upset you that I might not know about? And open the dialogue. Sometimes you're opening the door for a wave of criticism and berating. And the best way to deal with that is really to hold your cool and to just look straight forward into the thing to not do is lower your eyes, is not to shrink in your body language. Bullies love that. They will, the second they sense weakness, they will attack more. If they're avoiding you and you are saying to your boss, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? That is not a helpful way of being. You really need to have a very confident, a very strong, but a very calm conversation with your boss and say, so I'm sensing there's some dissatisfaction, there's some upset here. Can we talk about it? Let's discuss it. I'd like to work closely with you, and I'd like to work on this so that things are in a really great forward-moving place. And you really want to start learning to have the right language with a bully, because the second you demonstrate any kinds of weakness, like I'll try, I hope, I just, all those wishy-washy words and those shrinking words, they attack more. So you really have to, and the timing of all of this too, you cannot have a conversation with a bullying boss in the middle of a rant. If they're in the middle of a complete, if they've flown off the handle and they are completely in a rant, that's not the time to have a discussion. You really want the air to clear, give it some space, let them come back to their senses, and then open a very, very logical, very calm kind of conversation. If they will not speak with you, this is really good information for you to have. What I want to recommend to everybody watching this video is, you should be doing this no matter what, whether you have a bullying boss, a loving boss, a caring boss, a great culture, a bad culture, you need to start getting your victory list, your accomplishment list up to speed. You should be keeping track of every single accomplishment, big, little, small, and in between, everything that you accomplish, every good thing you've done for the company. And I don't mean just telling the company that you work hard. I'm talking about tangible accomplishments. You've led a team successfully. You've mentored somebody successfully. You've recommended a good hire for the company. You have been on track with all of your projects consistently. You've helped the company make money. You've helped the company save money. These are all things that you absolutely need to start keeping track of, because when you go into conversations with an attacking, manipulative, narcissistic, gaslighting boss, you want to have your ammunition ready, and you need to present it in a very factual way. And finally, if your company is going to, sometimes your boss is setting you up. The bullying boss is setting you up, is using these upsets, these dissatisfactions, these criticisms, this dissatisfaction, he or she is gathering evidence to justify demoting you, letting you go, eliminating you or transferring you, or just not allowing you to grow within the organization. It's a typical method of a weak boss to be evidence gathering against you, and you have to use the same, but you have to learn how to be you have to champion yourself. So I want you to understand the word I use. I want you to champion yourself. You have to be your own advocate. And the best way to be your own advocate is not to be defensive, but to have a very logical, well mapped out, well thought of a complete document, a very documented indication of everything that you have done to be supportive and tangibly helpful and valuable to your boss and to the company. The more you are professional about this, the better it is for you. Your boss may not be professional. It's very likely that your boss became a boss without any leadership training and probably doesn't feel he or she needs it. Many bosses feel like all of their staff and their team need training, but they don't need coaching or training. They're above it all because they feel that once they become a boss, that it's all about telling people what to do. Now, not all of them are like this, but it is a very, very common set of circumstances. And in today's world, unfortunately, what happens is people who get promoted are not people who are really great leaders. They're promoted because they've accomplished something in the company's rewarding them, but they're not necessarily well trained to be a good leader and to be a good guide for managing and leading and people. So the 4 different kinds. So now what do you do about it? So the first thing is you really want to understand that sometimes something's going on for your boss and it may have nothing to do with you, probably has nothing to do with you. You need to take stock of your own performance to see if you've actually contributed anything to this situation. But if you haven't, and by the way, you need to really find out from your boss if that's really accurate or not, to what degree it's accurate. But you also really need to understand that your boss may be very stressed out. You don't want to add to that stress. That doesn't mean you need to be, the victim here. In fact, I think it's extremely important for you to not see yourself as a victim. That's critical in your own psychological approach to this. The second thing is you do not want to fan any flames. You want to keep, when you have a bullying boss and a toxic boss, you want to keep your answers and your responses very short, very to the point. Ask really short questions. Don't get into long stories. Don't get into long explanations. Very short and very concise questions and answers. And you want to ask those questions like when someone's in a blaming mode. And I learned this from Stephen Covey. He really had a great section in there when when a boss was being unreasonable and demanding. A way to disarm the boss who is like this is to ask really good questions and say, well, how would you, how do you want me to handle this? What would you prefer? What do you need first? How can I help you? And so, in other words, keep it very factual, very logical, and very short. The more you get into long-winded conversations, stories, explanations, and emotional conversation, it feeds the flames and it gives your toxic bullying boss ammunition to get right in there and hit you harder. So you really want to keep it very short, very concise, very professional. And then the last thing I want you to think about is if you're in an environment that is very toxic, where you've got a bullying boss and you really don't see a pathway out of this, you might be getting an indication from the universe that you have outgrown this company or this environment or this firm, and it might be time for you to leave. Especially if you see that your boss is politically well situated and is not going anywhere. Because if going to HR these days is not really, for the most part, HR is not a very helpful avenue. I'm not saying it's impossible, but for the most part, HR can be, remember what HR is. HR is really just trying to keep the company moving along. They are not the psychologists of the company. They're not the emotional support system of the company at all. And when it comes to between you and the organization, if they feel like you're a problem and are complaining about a boss, and the boss is politically well situated, it's not going to bode well for you, and HR will probably not protect you. So more times than not, I've seen people go to HR unadvisedly and they've lost their jobs anyway. So what I would say is it might be time for you to really take stock of your career, get some objective input, not subjective within the company. In the company, you're not going to get the best advice, because they have their own agendas and they can't be objective for you and they can't see you objectively. So I would say get some objective input from a professional, whether it be a coach, whether it be a career advisor, and really start to look at your options, because it might be that you have outgrown this environment and are being shown a way to expand yourself, to grow, and to have an even better situation. You want to be in control of your timing for sure, and you want to do it carefully and very wisely, and that's why you need a plan. You need a plan for what to do next. But I will tell you that once you get a bullying boss, and if they've got the agenda road, if they're on that agenda road, I'm on an agenda, your timing is pretty limited. It's just a matter of time for the most part. So you need to really look at that as a possibility and take that into, sort of really take that in and make that part of your consideration. So I know that this is a really challenging topic. I know it's not fair. The way I really look at the corporate world and work world is this is very much like the Army. I learned that a long time ago. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. It really is about your boss just wants you to make him or her look good. They are protecting their own political. They might be a really caring boss. They might really care about creating a good team. Those are few and far between, and wonderful, great for you if you have that. But things might change for that person. A lot of things, their personal lives might change, their career might change. So many things can happen. The company might go through reorganizations. The company might go through mergers and acquisitions. Everything's changing so much today. The most important thing I want to leave you with is, no matter whether you have a bullying boss, a toxic boss, a nice boss, a great boss, start to work on your accomplishment list and start to really keep that up to date every single week and every single month. You will thank me for it, because that will give you confidence, that will make you feel good about yourself, and it will give you the right kind of information and ammunition in your toolkit if you should ever need it. Not only with your boss, but also in your job search. All right, you guys, so I hope this has been helpful for you. And just remember, if you like what you've been learning about on this channel, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you know when I release a new training video every single Tuesday, and tell your colleagues and friends about this, and definitely subscribe, because you're not alone. There are so many thousands and thousands of people today who are dealing with all kinds of really challenging circumstances in their jobs. And I know we all want to hold on to our jobs and we want to keep that safety and protect ourselves. But I'm here to tell you that everything that's happening for you in your career is a lesson. And the more you become a learner and a growth-minded person in your career, the better your career is going to go and grow. It will allow you to grow as a person, to feel better about yourself, and to earn more money and feel more fulfilled and more purposeful. So there might be some really great, I really sort of look at it this way, behind every obstacle is a huge opportunity. So use this opportunity, use this challenge to create your opportunity and to grow. I'm Nancy Fox, the Career Fox, and I'll see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.